with Jacque Howard. Profiling the businesses, organizations, and people that make Trenton better.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another edition of the Trenton 365 Show. I'm your host, Jacque Howard. You can hear us every Tuesday here over WIMG 1300, streaming over the website, WIMG1300.com, Facebook and Twitter as well. The Trenton 365 Show has a Facebook page, and the website is Trenton365.com. And if you're watching over television, it's channel 25, WPHY, all of Mercer County, New Jersey, where I like to say George Washington became George Washington. So in the studio with me is Nicole Bailey-Williams, who is the owner of Capital Corn and Confections, which is a gourmet popcorn company, as well as she's an author. Something that I just found out a few months ago, actually earlier in May, when she was a vendor at the Capital City Book Fair. So, Nicole, welcome back to the Trenton 365 Show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jacque. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. So I always like to give people an opportunity to share a little bit about who they are and then roll into the contact information. And then as everyone can see on television, you've got an array of books that you've written here that I'd really like to get into talking about that.
Oh, my goodness. There's so much to talk about. But, you know, I always think of myself as being a relatively simple woman who is just trying to have a good time and trying to ride the wheels off of this thing called life. So I don't know. Let me see. Where do I begin? I think I was born by a river in a little tent. Now, I am a Philadelphia native, and I came to the area by way of my husband, who I met in college, and his name is Judge Gregory Williams, and we are Trenton residents with two beautiful little girls. I've been teaching since 1995 at Ewing High School, and I've been doing a bunch of other things in between, just juggling.
Mm-hmm. And you know, it's interesting that you say that because you are doing a lot. And I often tell people, busy people are very busy in everything. So I want, just overall in an elevator speech, you're an author.
Yes.
An entrepreneur.
Yes.
As well as a teacher. Mm-hmm. And of course, a mother and a wife.
Yes.
And a very fashionable woman indeed.
Oh, why, thank you. I try to clean up every now and then.
So what got you started in everything? Was it the fact that you wanted to be an educator, or was it something that you had this entrepreneur spirit? What was it?
Well, one thing is that I've always said that I am a fourth generation educator. My mother taught in Philadelphia Public Schools for 33 years. Now, her mother didn't teach, but her mother's sister taught also in Philadelphia schools. I tell a story about how she migrated from South Carolina, and she taught in a one-room schoolhouse in South Carolina. My great aunt did. And her intended said to her one day, and of course I glamorize it and have winds blowing and rain falling and lightning, and he said to her, honey, I'm leaving South Carolina and I want to go north to a new place where we can start over and be have new opportunities. And she took the one key. It was a one-room schoolhouse, so she took the one key to the schoolhouse and came on up north. So I always laugh and say, boy, those kids are still waiting outside that schoolhouse now. But so Aunt Thelma was an educator, and then my great-grandmother Clementine was also an educator. So like I couldn't, fight teaching if I wanted to. It's in the blood, so I'm kind of duty-bound with it. But the other stuff just kind of happened by, I don't want to say by chance. I guess it was all by plan. Maybe not my plan, but it was all by somebody's plan.
Mm-hmm. And I like that the way that you put that. If you're constantly doing things and you're someone who's always throwing things at the wall, so to speak, and something sticks, you run with it a little while. It just so happens that right now you've got a bunch of things that are sticking, and I want to make sure that folks get a chance to see. So the first book is in my left hand, which is the right side of the screen, and your latest release is in my right hand on the left side of the screen. Talk about what got you into writing books, and then talk about your first book and then some of your others as well.
Okay, so I first started writing as a kid. I always used to write short stories as a little girl, and I had a good time with it. I actually had a teacher who was very encouraging with supporting my writing. My mother and father were great support, were a great support system. them as well. And I actually, do you know Ebony Magazine used to have something called Ebony Junior? You know Ebony Junior? Oh my gosh. Okay, so I remember writing something in Ebony Junior and being so very proud of myself. It was great fun. But so I've always written, and but I was always rather like shy about showing my writing to anyone. When I got to high school right outside of Philadelphia, everyone just seemed so much more confident and proud, and they just seemed to know that they had the stuff it took to make people notice their writing. So I said, oh gosh, I'm not quite so confident. I was confident in my other abilities, like my singing and my dancing, but I just wasn't so sure about the writing piece. So it wasn't until I started undergrad at Hampton University that I started to kind of feel comfortable with a pen in my hand. And that actually really came upon the heels of a visit by the late poet Amiri Baraka, who actually visited Hampton, and he listened to one of my poems. The Literary Society brought him in to visit Hampton, and he listened to one of my poems, and he applauded me on it, and I said, oh my gosh, maybe I do have a little bit of something that makes people, interested, because we revered him in his writing, and it was a wonderful thing to be acknowledged that way. So the writing has evolved over time. I started by writing, in my professional career, I started by writing book reviews and other articles for local papers. I'm such a fan of local media. I love it because there's so much that, you get the nitty gritty, you have your finger on the pulse. Like our local journalists have their finger on the pulse of what is really going on in the community. So I started doing some writing there, but I actually formulated a book review show on WDAS out of Philadelphia, and I got to interview authors all of the time. Once a month I interviewed authors, and in fact it was the first Tuesday of every month that I sat down and interviewed authors, and I finally decided to go ahead and put pen to paper and come up with my first book, and that was A Little Piece of Sky, which I self-published. Here's the actual self-published version of it. It was... when you self-published years ago, it meant finding the cover designer, getting the barcode, getting the ISBN number, finding a printer. It was so very much more complex than it is in modern times. So I self-published, and then after some time, I had gained a little steam under my wings, and I was approached by someone at Random House, and they wanted to repackage it and reproduce it, and that's what they did.
So I'm going to show you both covers here, folks. So keep your eyes open when you're in your local bookstore, hopefully, or if you are searching the internet, you can just research Nicole Bailey-Williams, and you can pick up some of her books. I'm sure they're all available on all the traditional websites, such as Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, etc. But I want this interview to jump around a little bit, because something that I really appreciate about you and your personality and others like you is that you've got your hands in so many different things. So I think that to go through a traditional form interview where it's okay, so talk to me about how you do your popcorn. To me, that's not going to work. I think that I want this to flow a little bit. And you hit the nail square when you just mentioned local media. And I'd like for you to elaborate on that a little bit more. And just let me tell you why. I'm often asked to give and do panel discussions and be a part of this and talk to these groups of people about what I do. And often people say, okay, well, where'd you do your master's? Where'd you do your undergrad? And I say I kind of fell into doing media here at WIMG, and this was a springboard to do some other things. And I'd like to encourage young people and other people to do the same. Oftentimes, I don't think that the plan that we have is the only plan that's available to us. And I think that living life is very important for us to be open to the movement of the Spirit and paying attention to all the different things that are coming in your life, whether it's people, places, or things. And so local media is one of those things that I'm a big supporter of.
Absolutely.
Buy local, spend your time local, keep as much as you can happening in your local community, know your local community. But I'd like for you to elaborate on local media from your perspective.
So local media is something that's so very important. Again, I was with my parents early this morning, and I saw in Philadelphia their Philadelphia Tribune newspaper. And the thing about local media is that, yet again, they are right there. They're on the front lines. It's not coming to you syndicated from like a box in the middle of Texas where they don't necessarily know what's going on in Trenton or in North Philadelphia or anything like that. They are right there on the front lines, and they see the players. They know what's going on. They ask the hard questions, and they're face to face. So it's a a wonderful resource, a wonderful outlet. And also local media gives people a shot. I remember like when I first self-published A Little Piece of Sky, while I got a lot of local support first. And that came in the form of book reviews in the Philadelphia Tribune, in the Philadelphia Sunday Sun newspaper, and a bunch of other local outlets who just opened their doors to me. And the thing is, when you self-publish, for example, people say, well, what's that all about? Did no one else want to publish your work? And they're really kind of skeptical. But when I tell you that local media said, wait a second, this is grassroots. Let us take this and run with it. And that's what I appreciate about local media. Whether it's radio, whether it is, TV, whether it's, newspaper, I really love it because it makes all the difference in the world. It really does.
Thank you. And I think that was a perfect sound bite to talk about local media. So thank you for that. And maybe I will cut that up and add that to something that I'll use at a later date.
My pleasure, sir.
Sure thing. And now I want you to talk about how A Little Piece of Sky. What was the process that you went through? Because, again, if you're doing it on your own, there's a lot of work. You got to proofread. You got to ask your friends to proofread. You got to ask your family to proofread. And like you said, coming up with just the artwork itself can sometimes be difficult because then you've got to find an artist, and then is the artist going to meet, what you're looking to accomplish, et cetera.
Right. Well, I mean, it encompasses all of those things, all of those different elements. And it really was a lot of work for me to do because I was still teaching at the time. I did 5 book signings every weekend. So 3 on Saturdays, 2 on Sundays. And I did one like random book signing during the course of the week because the thing is, yet again, with a with a self-published book, like you really are you're the PR person, you are the talent, you are the but when I came through, there were so many people. There was a beautiful network of folks who said, oh wait, use this person as a cover designer. Oh hey, this printer can give you a good rate if you use such and such kind of paper. Or there were so many people who were so helpful along the way, but it still was a lot of work to do. And it was a lot for me to teach during the day, come home, pack up books to ship them off to this distributor over here. But local bookstores were phenomenal. There was a bookstore, now tell me if you remember this, it was on it was right behind like Conduit and what was it?
Oh, it was part of Urban Word.
Okay.
It was part of Urban Word, which is now the Trenton Social.
Okay. Sounds right. Yes. Sounds right. And it was owned by one of my sorors and one of my Delta sorors. And, they were really phenomenal about drumming up word about the book signing. I remember going in there for a signing and thinking, well, sometimes, what do they say? Sometimes the bear gets you, sometimes you get the bear. And I had been to signings where there may have been 3 or 4 people. And I'd been to signings where there were like 50 people. And, for an up-and-coming artist, that kind of support is everything that they need. It gives them encouragement. It also gives them funds to try to, let's be real. It gives them funds so that they can actually kind of keep going, so they can turn around and go back to the printer to keep getting that good word out. So it was a lot to do, but I had fun doing it. I have no complaints. And the thing about self-publishing during my time was that you really learned about the business. You learned about distribution. You learned about percentages. You learned about, like packaging your product along with something else too, and you learned about how to sell. No one ever believes when I say that I'm naturally shy. Can you believe it? But the idea was that I had to step outside of that comfort zone in order to try to promote something that, that was mine. So it was a win-win all the way around for me.
That's fantastic. And I'm speaking with Nicole Bailey-Williams, who is an entrepreneur with Capital Corn and Confections. She is a popcorn entrepreneur with a location in Ewing Township, right near the airport, right on Scotch Road. I'm going to have her give the contact information in just a moment. As she said, she is part of a family that is full of educators and teachers based out of the Philadelphia area. And in addition to that, she's also an author. So, Nicole, I want you to share your contact information information, and then I'd like for you to talk about some of your other books that you have here.
Okay, so the popcorn shop is located at 195 Scotch Road in Ewing Township. So it's about 2 doors down from R.E.A.C.H Japanese restaurant. And right now we're maintaining Saturday hours between 11 and 4. We're not doing the full weekday hours, and we have just about 5 more Saturdays to come in for people to come in and get their delicious gourmet popcorn before we actually close our doors. That's actually something else that we can talk about at a later date. But people can find me online at www.trentonpopcorn.com, and I can always be reached at trentonpopcorn@aol.com, and also 609-331-9POP.
339-POP, P-O-P. So your other books that you have here, you have Floating a Novel, The Love Child's Revenge, and then what looks like to be a children's book, the Shelby series, The Day the Plums Disappeared. So which one would you like to talk about first?
Oh my goodness gracious. Well, let me talk about the Day the Plums Disappeared. So when I wrote the book, when I originally just sat down to pen the book, I had just one child, Shelby. But by the time the publication process came along, I was blessed with another beautiful baby.
Indeed, she is.
Thank you. And her name is Sydney, and she factors well into this book, which, I actually did all the artwork for, and I am no artist, but I knew collage well enough to know how to pull some wonderful pieces together. So there is one collage that features my younger daughter along with my older daughter's hand, and it's actually, I think, probably my favorite picture in the book. So so it depicts my little one, and she was like 1 at the time, and it was so hard. Actually, no, she wasn't even 1. She was a few months younger than 1, and I was trying to get those little hands still so I can trace that, and those are Shelby's hands too. So this was really a labor of love, like actually working on the collage, because it tells a story of a real life event when Shelby and my dad would go out every single time we went to visit them in Philadelphia, and they would go looking for plums. And then one day they went to the same plum tree that was next door on Miss Minnie's property, and they got there and all the plums were gone. So Shelby said, "Oh my gosh, what happened?" And I just remember her face looking so crushed when she came back into the house, and she said, "All the plums are gone," So it formed the backdrop for a story. I said, "Oh my gosh, I can talk about the beautiful benefits of eating fruit. I can talk about the 4 seasons. I can talk about spending time with our elders and everything." So it's kind of chock full of wonderful, like different elements that people can all relate to. So.
And I want you to stick with that a little bit, because I'm in this process now with my 12-year-old, soon to be 13 in a couple of hours. Hello, Maddie. Happy birthday, honey.
Happy birthday, Maddie.
And so we're going through this process now where we're talking about, hey, at no other time in history is it as easy to document your life as it is now.
Right.
And part of what I'm trying to do through radio and television and all my other projects is to document this history that is going to make up my life. And I'm encouraging my daughter to do the same. So it's so eloquent how you put it together, how that one experience of your father and Shelby finding out that the plums disappeared, and how you tie in fruit and growing and your relationship with neighbors and spending time with your family, etc. Each one of those is another branch in what we consider to be the tree of our history. Can you just elaborate on that?
Absolutely. And one of the things that really sticks with me about that is that all of those things are important on their own. The intergenerational learning is something that is so valuable to me, because I know my grandpa was one of my favorite people in this entire world. And I actually just talked about him earlier today. I remember saying to my grandpa, "Oh, Grandpa, I need to lose a little weight." And he said to me, "What? You are just as round and pretty as an apple." And that's old school. I love that. That was beautiful. But that intergenerational learning is something that I really wanted to document in the book, because it was so important for me. And it's so important for my kids. They learn so much from their grandparents. They learn how to cook and sew and do all kinds of really cool things. So that is another branch, another facet of life. And I hope that they are documenting and learning, or documenting as well as they go along the way. but there are just so many just kind of lessons there that are sometimes very subtle. Sometimes I sit down and I call myself giving a real teaching lesson to my daughters, and they're like, yeah, I'm not sure. But then other times the lessons come subtly, and I'm just so pleased that it happens. And that's the same thing there. In the book, I mean, there are subtle lessons to be learned about patience. Like, you stop and think that you have to wait an entire year for fruit to bloom again. I mean, that's a beautiful thing. And, and that's what I tried to convey in the book. It's just one more of those branches of lessons there.
Fantastic. I'm speaking with Nicole Bailey-Williams, who is an author, an entrepreneur, an educator, a teacher, as well as a mother and a wife. And we're talking about all different things involved with her, such as her popcorn company, also her books, and also a little bit about being a mother and a wife. And I want you to switch now and talk about your book, The Love Child's Revenge.
That was actually a lot of fun to write. I always write these books with these very thoughtful protagonists, and they're always torn between realizing their potential versus what all the other stuff, the other gunk that the outside world kind of heaps on them. And that starts off there too, but let me tell you, this girl in this book, her name is Peach Harrison, and she's a newscaster, and she is flamboyant and fiery, and she was so much fun to write because she is so very different from my other protagonists, who are, like I said, they're all reflective, and they, turn things over in their head. Like, so, in fact, when I think about my books, so much of the action is actually internal that we, like, if you think about trying to put it into a movie, you're thinking, well, I guess we'd have to add a couple of things to a couple of, lightning bolts and a couple of, car explosions or whatever. But Peach Harrison is such a diva from Philadelphia. She learns that that she is the product of an adulterous affair, and she's trying to figure out, oh my gosh, so was I wanted at all? And then, it turns out that the man who is her father is someone who is a good man. He made a mistake, and but he intends to do right by his daughter. So he leaves Peach all kinds of access to money and everything. But but his wife is like, not if I have my way, and she seeks to cut Peach out of her inheritance. And so as Peach is on her way back north from down south, she determines that she is going to reclaim her heritage and her money, and she's going to exact revenge on those who have wronged her.
That actually sounds like it would be a nice series on maybe a bunch of webisodes or something like that.
You know what? If you know how to do it, and I'm all for it, I'll back you. I don't even know how to, I'm so not tech savvy, so I don't even know how to do that stuff. But that sounds good to me.
And that's one of the things that I pride myself in meeting people and learning different things. And I've got a wonderful group of resources of artists, filmmakers, photographers, graphic artists, etc., fine artists, and I'll throw that idea around and see if there's some people who'd be interested in putting together a short film about the love child's revenge and Peach, should I say. Now let's talk a bit about Floating, a novel.
So Floating is also set in Philadelphia. I have my main character there is a young lady named Shauna, and she feels like she's floating between two different worlds. She's biracial, and she's like, wait, no, where do I fit in? And this is coming of during a time when people had to make a choice, as opposed to now where you don't necessarily have to take such a hard and fast, stance on what you are. Shauna is like, well, wait a second. I don't know where exactly I fit, and what exactly, what am I? Do I fit in either world? And think about the old movie Imitation of Life, in which the main character there, she's like, I don't know what to do, because on this side I'm being told this, on the other side I'm being told something else. So same concept with Shauna, but nothing is ever quite so simple with me. We also see that her family's paths had crossed also before in the past, and that time it wasn't so pretty. So we try to, we see her as she's learning about family history and uncovering some very uncomfortable truths about her family in the past. And the question is, what will she do with that new information that she has?
Now, that's 3 of the 5 books that you have here, and I want to go back to your first book.
Yes.
And I'm going to hold up both of these. A Little Piece of Sky, the one in my right hand. If you're looking on TV, it's in the left hand, or the left side, and on the right side. One is from the self-publishing time, and then the other one is when, I guess, some funds and resources and things came together a bit more, and Nicole Bailey-Williams was able to have that reproduced or reissued. Talk about A Little Piece of Sky. What would be the subject matter in this one?
So A Little Piece of Sky is set again in Philadelphia, and my main character there is her name is Song, and her last name is a little corny. It's Bird, Song, Byrd. And Song is the youngest of 4 children, and her mother is constantly moving around and constantly on the run, and we know that some people busy themselves in order to keep from thinking, and feeling, and that's exactly what the case is with Song's mother. We find that Song is she's alienated in the community in which she lives. She lives in a primarily Latino community in North Philadelphia, so she doesn't have a whole lot of money, doesn't have a whole lot of stability or support, and she longs for that. But when she finally gets it, it comes tragically. So she's kind of guilt-ridden, like, oh my gosh, I wanted a better life, but it came, upon the heels of my mother's passing, my mother's death. So what in the world do I do? Do I rejoice in the happiness and the new life that I have? Or, do I wallow in the guilt, survivor's guilt, if you will, of how I got those riches in life? So the funny thing is I actually teach that book at Ewing High School. And, I've actually taught it like across the country. In fact, I was just posting about this, and a teacher in Brooklyn who had me in, I don't know, a decade ago, said, "Oh, I see a little piece of sky on the desk," and it's something that I had taught at various universities: University of Pennsylvania, Cheyney University, Payne College in Augusta, University of Arkansas, where Elin Harris, a great writer who we lost a few years ago, Elin Harris was teaching my first and second books out there. But I did it all these different places, and then finally Ewing said, "Oh, yeah, well." We do have a published writer on our staff, the only one published on our staff. And maybe we could teach some of her works there. So it's been a very interesting ride teaching my own work in school.
And we're not going to have enough time to go into like a lot of the community organizing side of what I do. Thank you, Steve. DJ Say What, who is our producer for tonight.
Okay.
But the whole thing of civic engagement and the importance of community organizing.
Yes.
Because our world is changing rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
And our laws and our rules and ordinances and so forth haven't caught up to technology.
Right.
And besides not being able to get caught up, it's almost like a race between a race car and someone who's in a regular car. It's just pulling away. So at some point we've got to either go far in advance or skip a whole segment just so that we can catch up, because technology isn't going to slow down. And I say all that because, like you said, an educator, a published educator at the Ewing High School, a public school with 5 books right here on the desk in the studio with global traction, international access, and it's just coming to the point now where the school where you've been a teacher finally says, "Oh my goodness, maybe we ought to have her teach a class here or teach her books here."
Isn't that interesting?
Well, that's just the way things work.
Right,
But
right.
let's move on to your latest book, which is Crush. And from the looks of it, I would assume that it has something to do with that relationship between people. And I'm not sure how old, but it looks like it takes place in a school.
Yes. I actually borrowed a bit of my life for that, in that my main character is a high school English teacher, and she is a native Philadelphian, and that's pretty much where the similarities end. She doesn't. She was finally kind of. how do I say? I actually just started talking about this.
Well, how about we do this? Because we're about up on a break. We'll let you regroup about that, and then we'll come back and we'll talk a bit more about that, and then we'll transition into some of the entrepreneurial things that you're doing as well.
Okay.
You are listening to the Trenton 365 show, heard Tuesday nights from 8 to 9 p.m. over WIMG 1300. And if you're watching, it's over WPHY, Channel 25 in Mercer County, New Jersey. I'm your host, Jacque Howard, and I'm speaking with Nicole Bailey-Williams, and we'll be back after a very short break.
In the entire world, there is only one thrill capital. Six Flags, with one incredible thrill after another. Kingda Ka, Superman Ultimate Flight, and now the Joker 4D Free Fly Coaster. If you have a pulse, we'll make it race. Right now, you can save up to $25 on admission at SixFlags.com. Go big, go Six Flags Great Adventure, the world's largest theme park.
Need a truck to move? Let Justin's rental of Selman's Eagle save the day. Justin's has the right trucks for all commercial and residential moves. Justin's has the right moving supplies and boxes available. Justin's rental at Selman's Eagle has everything you need for your move at affordable prices. Featuring the best in pickup trucks, 10 and 15 box trucks and vans. Justin's rental at Selman's Eagle is located at 2596 South Broad Street, across from the McDonald's in Hamilton. For your rental truck needs, call 609-888-3327. That's 609-888-3327. Justin's Rental at Selman's Eagle. If you're moving, we have the trucks to meet your moving needs.
Remember in the beginning, when you first started to build a life for you and your family, you never imagined it would come to this. Instead of living your dreams, you're living with debt. In fact, it's smothering you. Now there's a way you can take back control with one simple call. If you owe $10,000 or more in credit card debt, you qualify to receive a free, no-obligation consultation on how to get rid of that debt for good. Call the Debt Helpline now. We work on your behalf to reduce your debt. We specialize in credit cards, retail store cards, and medical bills. One simple call is all it takes to get the ball rolling to a debt-free life. Stop living with debt and start living your dreams. Call the Debt Helpline now.
800-709-4389. 800-709-4389. 800-709-4389. That's 800-709-4389.
Doing anything fun this 4th of July? However you celebrate freedom, it's thanks to our men and women in uniform who are preserving and protecting our nation. You'll agree, they need and deserve our support. But how do we encourage our brave warriors best? By giving them the gift of God's Word in audio through the amazing Military Bible Stick, a digital device small enough to take anywhere and tough enough to use even on the battlefield. To see for yourself, visit militarybiblestick.com. 2 young deployed service members tell us,
"The Bible Stick has really decreased my anxiety. I have stopped worrying about tomorrow."
When I'm away from my family, I listen to the Bible Stick to keep me staying strong.
Keep our military strong, spiritually strong, with the Military Bible Stick. See how you can bless our men and women in uniform this Independence Day. Visit militarybiblestick.com today.
Back to the Trenton 365 show. I'm your host, Jacque Howard, and you can follow us on Twitter at Trenton365 and a website, Trenton365.com, and on Facebook.